I'm Dr. Guillermo Balboa, Research Assistant Professor in Nutrient Management at Digital Ag here at University of Nebraska. And today I'm presenting about On-Farm Research Network ecosystem increases awareness and use of digital ag. So as you know, the Nebraska On-Farm Research Network has been providing critical research with farmers to answer their questions about production, profitability, and sustainability in the last 30 years. 75% of those farmers mentioned before that they put the research findings into practice. And most of these farmers are using on-farm research technology with digital ag to design, establish, and manage those experiments and to produce the results with the university. Our hypothesis then is that farmers attending to these on-farm research network meetings that we conduct early in the year to present previous season data has more knowledge and adoption of digital ag tools than an average farmers in Nebraska. So in order to find that, we conducted a statewide survey asking to 2,500 farmers by mail and by digital, getting 332 responses, and then running the same survey into the On-Farm Research Network meeting attendees. That survey was composed of 40 questions regarding definition of digital ag, technology adoption, values and barriers that they were seeing. We processed this data and we are trying to see if there were some difference in adoption in these two groups of farmers. Going to the result, we can see that for Nebraska farmers, 54% they don't have a clear definition of the digital ag, and 22% they never hear about that topic. When we move to the On-Farm Research Network farmers that were attending to the meetings, 54% were able to clearly define digital agriculture. If we take a look to the words that they were using to define digital ag, we asked them single words up to 5 and unique words per response. In terms of Nebraska farmers, they were providing 0.88, but Nebraska On-Farm Research Network farmers attendees, they were having like a richer vocabulary using more words. And in total, an average farmer was providing only 2 words to define digital ag, but the On-Farm Research Network farmers meeting attendees, they were providing 2.7. So that's giving you an idea that we're having more kind of vocabulary to define this concept. Going to the technology adoption, we listed here 34 technologies, and the bars are indicating the percentage of adoption that that's when the farmers say that they use the technology. The dark green is the On-Farm Research meeting farmers attendees, and the light one, the light green is the Nebraska statewide. You can clearly see a trend that in all the cases, all technologies, there was most adoption for on-farm research farmers attendees, and then specifically from some cases like yield map or GPS. An average 6% increase in general adoption of technologies was identified for the on-farm research network farmers that were attending to these meetings. If we take a look to how they perceive the benefits of using these digital ag technologies, we are seeing again the same trend. The farmers that were attending and participating to the On-Farm Research Network were seeing more value, especially for increased production quality on farms generating their own data. And it's important to point out that those farmers were recording 39% of the values when they were using technologies, but Nebraska farmers on average, they only record the value of the technology in 28% of the cases. So these numbers are both low, but we are seeing a trend that for on-farm research farmers, that value was larger, and that's important because recording the value of the technology is important to increase adoption. As a conclusion, farmers participating again on the On-Farm Research Network were able to use more words to define digital ag. The level of adoption of those technologies was higher for this On-Farm Research Network farmers attending to these meetings in all categories. There was an increase in 11% of the on-farm research farmers recording digital ag benefits. And overall, we can see that this ecosystem generated by the Nebraska On-Farm Research Network were showing that farmers really within this ecosystem were showing more knowledge about digital ag technologies and adoption, also record of that value. We want to acknowledge all the farmers that participate in the survey, and then with that, you can check more of the results in our 5-page paper. And thank you, everyone. You can also contact us by mail if you have any further questions. Thank you.